Hello YouTubers, this is Gold Standard C0924 coming at you with another video. I'm going to be picking up where I left off in my Morphin Power Rangers series reviews, and I'll be reviewing in this video for Season 3 as we wrap up the series reviews. So Season 3 starts off after after the Power Rangers movie was released theatrically. And it's basically, season 3 was sort of a departure from the first two seasons. One was the fact that the foot soldiers, the putties who played the foot soldiers in the first two seasons, they were pushed aside in favor of these bird-like foot soldiers called the Tango Warriors. And the putties went through a few changes over the course of the episodes. In the first season, when Rita was the main villain, she had them as the Putty Patrol, and then the second season comes when Lord Zed takes over Rita's throne and upgrades the putties to become the Z Putties. And then we get to season 3. The putties are gone for good, and and then basically the Tango Warriors became the foot soldiers for season 3. And they were kind of taken from the movie as well, but they were just called a different name, like Tengu instead of Tanga. But that's just a minor nitpick difference there. And also, this kind of results in less unmorphed fight scenes, and what you get in return is the Ninjetti fights. And I'll explain more about the Ninjetti costumes as the video progresses. So yeah, season 3 was just known for a lot of changes, and that's really season 3 in general. So I'm gonna run through some of the most important episodes of the season and my brief thoughts behind each episode that I discuss. So season 3 unofficially opens up with the 3-part miniseries entitled A Friend in Need. So basically, in A Friend in Need, Illinois, which was the planet residing Alpha, where he lived, Illinois was under attack, and Zordon summons the Power Rangers, and they inform them about Count Dragon and basically the villain of the main villain, just to kind of promote like the short-lived Masked Rider series. He was the antagonist towards Masked Rider, the main enemy. So the Rangers, they go to Illinois, all except Kimberly, who was falling ill at the time, and she couldn't perform under her ranger duties, and so she was stuck with this flu. And on top of that, the Power Rangers were away from Earth, and Kimberly had to stay on Earth to kind of protect it in case Lord Zed and Rita plan to unleash some kind of attack, whether it's like monster or creating a monster, or if they invade Earth themselves. So Kimberly stays put. And then, the Power Rangers, they meet up with Dax and his friends, and, Dax reveals his identity to the Rangers as the Masked Rider. And, basically the 3-part goes on, and while all this was going on, Lord Zed and Rita create the Repeltor monster to invade Earth. And, and then Kimberly had to come in, save, just protect the city, and they had a little stare down and they're fighting. So Repeltor was kind of more like a repainted version of Silverhorns, the one of the mini bosses from season 2. So he's just dressed in this green sort of costume and eventually during the fight, Repeltor gets caught with Kimberly's flu, and then eventually, the Power Rangers, they're still in Illinois, the rest of them, and eventually after that, Dax congratulates the Power Rangers and thanking for them to help them, and eventually, like at the end of the three-parter, Count Dragon follows the Power Rangers to Earth. They realize that they were from another planet, and the Power Rangers come in, save the day, and they go back. And so Dax was summoned by King Lexion, the king of Illinois, and he orders Dax to go to Earth, and because Count Dragon was planning an attack on there, and so that's basically what Friend in Need was. So I mean, when they aired that series, they didn't really show any reruns a whole lot. So in the reruns, they, like I said, they hardly showed any reruns, and every time Jetix was like, every time Jetix would rerun some of the older Power Ranger episodes, they always tend to skip this episode, and they would go straight into like Ninja Quest, and that kind of got me a little, I wouldn't say angry in a way, but just a little confused at first. Because, A Friend in Need, unlike many other Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episodes that were shown a whole lot, Friend in Need was one of those very obscure episodes that wasn't really aired a whole lot. I'm not really sure why, maybe because Master Rider was such a flop, and, it did received a lot of backlash from a lot of critics, especially a lot of fans of the original source of Masked Rider, which was Kamen Rider Black RX, which was a lot grittier, darker, and edgier. So yeah, I mean, and Masked Rider on the other hand was more like more lighthearted with a lot of goof ups, and it was very a comic relief season. Just a lot of silly storylines, silly plots. It never really took itself very seriously. So I mean, that probably might be why Masked Rider doesn't get the respect that it gets. So maybe a lot of people just choose to forget the Masked Rider series ever existed, and maybe that's probably why they don't show Power Rangers don't show any reruns of this episode. So I mean, it was like I said, it was one of those episodes that doesn't get reran a whole lot, and so I mean, I think that's probably at least my reason for why Masked Rider doesn't get a lot of respect. So that's basically A Friend in Need, and then we get to what I believe is the official season 3 premiere, and we get this 4-part miniseries entitled Ninja Quest, which was basically a TV version of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. And in this episode, Rita's brother, Rito Revolto, he makes his debut, and along the way, he brings in these foot soldiers who I discussed were the Tango Warriors. And what happens is that the Power Rangers fight Rito, and they summon the Thunder Megazord. And then eventually there was like a power grid overload, and this kind of causes the Megazords to self-destruct, and so the Rangers escape the hatch of the Megazords, and the power. And not only were the Megazords demolished, but the Power Rangers weren't able to morph anymore, and as a result, the Power Rangers were seemingly defeated. The command center was almost destroyed, or at least the interior. So eventually, Zordon tells the Rangers that there was someone out there that could help the Power Rangers retrieve some new powers, and so it was kind of believed that the quest was more of a myth, because there might be a chance that the powers that the new powers that Zordon was telling them about may not be there, but despite that, the Power Rangers all agreed to go on this little quest, And like I said, it reminisces a little bit of the movie, like the way they lost their powers and now they have to find some new ones. So I mean, the concepts is somewhat identical, but just in a different, different circumstance, different sort of situation. Um, so eventually, the Power Rangers go on this desert. They go through these certain obstacles. They confront with the Tangle Warriors for a little bit, um, and then once they fend them off, they go. They meet up with Ninjor, who was who was this ninja master, and eventually, after certain fallouts here and there, takes a lot of convincing for Ninjor, and eventually they do this little ceremony, and the Power Rangers receive these ninja powers, so they were kind of suited in these multicolored costumes of their respective colors. Um, so it plays out the same. Um, you know, um, with Tommy, he gets the power of the Falcon. Rocky gets the power of the ape. Kimberly gets the crane. Billy gets the wolf. Adam gets the frog. And there's no punchline for anyone that wonders from the movie, but no, there's no punchline of Adam saying I'm a frog. So yes, but he's still the frog regardless. And Aisha was the bear. So I think that was all of those Rangers I listed. Um, and then after that, the Power Rangers were they have their first fight with the Tango Warriors. But this time that they're utilizing their Ninjetti costumes, and the thing with the Ninjetti costumes is that unlike the movie where the hood, they have a hood where it covers out their whole face. Unlike whereas the movie, it only covers like half their face. So there's a slight difference. I mean, not much really, but I kind of miss I just didn't like the whole idea of just having them wear a hood and cover their whole faces. Especially like Tommy, when he was the White Ranger, how his costume almost resembles the KKK. Especially when they added the hood in the mix. So they kind of got away with that sort of thing. So I mean, I know Power Rangers gets a habit of being criticized for hiring being supposedly racist. With there's a black guy being the Black Ranger and there's a Asian actress being the Yellow Ranger, that sort of bullshit. But no one ever really brings up the whole, the media doesn't never really brought up the whole white Ninjetti costume almost resembling like the KKK. But but that nitpick aside, I just didn't think the whole hood thing was necessary. But I guess I can understand why at the same time, since they have to, so that their identities weren't going to be revealed to anyone else. So I guess it does have some sort of excuse for that. Um, so that's basically my thoughts on the Ninjetti costumes. Um, and eventually the Power Rangers succeed, and eventually they also have another. They eventually also morph into their full Ranger form, and unfortunately they actually use the same Ranger costumes that they used prior to the morphing grid overload. So the Power Rangers retain their Zoo Ranger suits, and Tommy retains his Die Ranger suit. So really no changes really. Um, so I mean, it wouldn't really be a costume change until a season later when Zeo comes. Um, so that's basically Ninja Quest, I guess. And also in that episode, Bulk and Skull go and become junior patrols, and this also leads to the debut of Lieutenant Stone, who would be kind of serving as their mentor for this season and Zeo. So Lieutenant Stone debuts here. So eventually, Ninja Quest, that's basically Ninja Quest in a nutshell. Very good way to start it off. I'm not really sure if I want to prefer this over the movie. But I mean, they're both very identical, just like I said, different circumstances, and just different, slightly different setting. So, but Ninja Quest, either way, I mean, I still enjoyed both versions. So that's really, the season premiere in a nutshell. And then we have a few one-off episodes. But the one most notable one-off episode is the episode that came after Ninja Quest, and the episode I'm talking about is A Brush with Destiny, which was planting the seeds of Kimberly's departure. So around this time, Amy Jo Johnson was prepared to leave the series in order to pursue other projects. So they were slowly phasing out her character, and in A Brush with Destiny, Kimberly's received this news from her mother that they were gonna move to Paris, where she and a French painter were gonna live together, and Kimberly's starting to feel a little, Kimberly's kind of a bit uncertain of herself because once Kimberly moves to Paris, she can't really contact her friends. Paris is in France, and in Europe, where Europe and the United States are very long distance. So Kimberly's kind of a bit worried. She's been stressing out. She's been getting these nightmares, and Zed and Rhea released the monster today, which is the artist mole, and the artist mole turns any color into black and white, and so Kimberly eventually saves the day. And at the end of the episode, Kimberly and her mother make some sort of agreement. Kimberly, chooses to kind of stay with, chooses to stay in Angel Grove for a little while, and Kimberly would move in with Aisha. That was really A Brush with Destiny. Just a very solid episode. But you could really tell that they were gonna kind of phase her character out even before the multi-parter story arc, which we'll get to. But Brush with Destiny, like I said, just a very solid episode. And then you have another multi-parter episode. Stop the Hate Master, which was an Aisha focused episode. And in that two-part episode, Zed and Rita create the monster known as the Hate Master, and he unleashes these sort of particles to people, and once the particles are inside people's heads, they start to argue, and there seems to be a lot of negativity inside of them. And so with the Hate Master, he unleashes his particles to the Power Rangers, all except Aisha, who was at her grandmother's house. And the other Power Rangers were caught in the hate spell, where there's like these constant arguing and just a lot of trash talking and stuff like that. But the Hate Master was probably the only Aisha focused episode that to me actually mattered. She didn't really have Aisha just didn't really have a whole lot going with her. She didn't, the actress didn't really stick around very long, and by the end of season 3, her character gets written off. Aisha did sort of get the short end of the stick, unlike Rocky and Adam, who would go on to have some decent success when we get to Zeo. But Aisha, I sort of feel bad for her in a way, especially not just like behind the scenes, but also in the episode itself. In the episode also, Aisha and Kimberly were joining a friendship club, but one of the leaders of the friendship club, they turned it down. They didn't want Aisha around because she wasn't rich like she was. So Kimberly eventually follows suit. She wasn't going to join unless if Aisha isn't going to join. So Kimberly and Aisha have this strong bonding, and unfortunately Kimberly would fall under the spell of the Hate Master. But eventually Aisha Aisha fights off the Hate Master spell, and pretty much prevents the Power Rangers from breaking up. So eventually that was real, and then eventually the Power Rangers do the typical and destroy the Hate Master once and for all, and that's basically the Hate Master there. So I mean, it was still a pretty good episode. Like I said, it was just kind of fortunate that this was the only true focus of Aisha, and we didn't really see a whole lot of her moments to shine. But I mean, I guess it was better than nothing. Um, so that's basically Stop the Hate Master there. And then we get to the multi-part episode. This is really the start of the official start of the slowly phasing out the character of Kimberly. And in this two-parter, A Range of Catastrophe, we get to see the introduction of Katherine. And, she is posed as a normal feline cat that Kimberly and Aisha stumble upon at the park. And so Kimberly names the cat PC, which stood for Park Cat, meaning they found her from the park. While eventually Kimberly and Aisha confront with Rito and the Tango Warriors, and while all that was going on, what they didn't realize was the cat that they stumbled upon turns out to be an actual human being. And after that, and also in that episode, Tommy gets sent to the Moon Palace. And what happens is that Tommy at the juice bar meets up with Katherine, who was trying to help. Her car wasn't working, so she was going to ask Tommy to help lend her a hand. And eventually, it turns out to be a ruse when they both get sent to the Moon Palace. Although technically, Tommy doesn't even realize that Katherine was siding with Rita and the goons the whole time. So Tommy didn't realize her intentions. So it kind of leads to a battle between him and Goldar. And the other 5 Rangers are looking upon the viewing globe in the command center. And eventually Kat turns into this monster, and the Power Rangers had to summon the Megazord and eventually destroy the cat monster. But unfortunately they didn't realize that the cat monster turned out to be Kat herself. So Kat was kind of like remaining a mystery to people. Eventually, Katherine in her human form meets up with the Power Rangers for the first time. So Katherine was basically a character from Australia. So her father had some. She got he got like a job offer in the United States, and she moved in with him. But that was really A Range of Catastrophe. But Katherine Sutherland, she was really hot. I mean, I sort of had a crush on her as a kid. She's still pretty now. Don't get me wrong, but she's still pretty now, technically. But she was still hot back then too. So not taking away anything from her. But Katherine Sutherland, you heard like in the constant interviews she did, how she enjoys playing, the dark side to her character, playing evil. So I'm kind of glad, she felt comfortable doing it. I always thought she did a pretty good job at that. Now, when I did like now in my older videos, it did come off very overcritical about it. But just the fact that it was sort of the beginning of the end for Kimberly, and how she wasn't really utilized a whole lot until A Different Shade of Pink. But and that's where we get to another multi-part, which was changing of the Zords. And what happens is that Katherine steals Kimberly's coin, and as a result, Kimberly's powers were drained, and she was feeling dehydrated as a result of her missing her power coin. But however, she was able to morph into her Ninjetti costume. But unfortunately, Kimberly passes out during a fight against the Tango Warriors, and of course, Goldar kidnaps Kimberly and takes her in the Moon Palace, where she's kind of lying unconscious. And there was one thing, even though I was kind of a little overcritical, like I said, there were some shining moments. You'll get to see Lord Zed invade the command center, much to the Power Rangers' shock. And eventually, Tommy steps in. He goes to the Moon Palace. He and Zed were going at it. While Tommy was attempting to rescue Kimberly. So Tommy and Zed were fighting, and it ends in a no contest. Tommy eventually gets Kimberly out of the Moon Palace, and eventually, even though Kimberly gets rescued, her power coin was still missing. And another note was the Falcon Zord that Tommy operates. The Falcon Zord gets kidnapped also, and they don't get it back either. So it was kind of used as somewhat of a remote control to the Ninja Megazord, but unfortunately they cannot have access to that. And to kind of make it up, Zordon introduces the Rangers to the Shogun Megazords to kind of use as like a substitute for the time being. So that's really kind of changing the Zords in a nutshell. Just I don't know, it was still somewhat an entertaining episode, but like I said, I just didn't like the way Kimberly was hardly getting any true focus, and how she was kind of sidelined for most of the mini arc. I guess you could say Kimberly was more of a third wheel, but they were kind of focusing more on like Katherine being the evil one and Tommy being the superhero and the prince. But don't get me wrong. I mean, Tommy had his moments with Zed. I mean, I'm not taking that away. I mean, I liked the fight he had with Zed, and Katherine, like I said, did a pretty good job, portraying the evil one. But it almost seems so one-sided at the same time. But I mean, I know I'm gonna get a lot of people are gonna disagree with me on that. But I don't know. But that was just basically my thoughts on Changing of the Zords. And then we get to a different shade of pink, and in that episode, Kimberly gets an offer from Coach Smith, who was a international gymnast trainer, and the playing global games were coming up, and Kimberly's selected, and Kimberly kind of gets overwhelmed with ranger duty and her training as training in the plan to qualify for the playing global games, and so Kimberly sort of stresses out. And also along the way, Kat's starting to have these sort of flashbacks, and how she got kidnapped and how she got caught under a spell by Rita. And it was kind of weird at first, when Katherine debuted, because they never really actually showed her getting kidnapped in any way. Because how in Green with Evil they showed Tommy getting kidnapped and Rita putting Tommy under the spell. But with Katherine, you didn't really see that, but not until like several episodes later. But I mean, I always kind of wondered back then just how exactly Kat went evil. But she just appeared, debuted right out of the gate, and we didn't really know how long Rita and Zed had her. But you would think like her parents or her father would have said something, but then again, Power Rangers never really showed their parents a whole lot. So I mean, it has a little different set of mentality when it comes to parents and Power Rangers and how worried that their children and whatever happened to them. So it doesn't really be important. So I mean, that was really that. But eventually, Kimberly gets sent to the hospital. Kat was the first one to witness Kimberly collapsing when she was practicing her. She was practicing on the moon bounce, not the moon bounce, but the balance beam. Excuse me. And eventually she collapsed, and Kat calls 911. And basically, the Power Rangers, are feeling, they're kind of grieving over. They're kind of overcoming grief, basically. And so I mean, it was actually pretty serious, for a Power Ranger episode. Like someone going to the hospital, it's a pretty rare moment in Power Rangers, especially with one of the Rangers actually getting hurt in some way. But I mean, for its time, it was just such a big deal, and it's something that you don't really see in today's Power Rangers, like, the real situation behind all this, like Rangers actually getting hurt and almost to the point where they might die. So it was for its time. I mean, there was no way that Power Rangers would, get away with doing this. But especially with today's, I mean, today's writers probably wouldn't even go in this route. But it was still pretty cool. Um, so it was, like I said, a very enjoyable episode. And eventually, Kimberly passes her coins to Katherine, and Kimberly leaves the series. So Katherine becomes a pink Power Ranger. So that's basically a different shade of pink. So, man, I'm losing my train of thought here, so I apologize. So, I mean, Kimberly's departure, was just really unfortunate, but I guess I can't really blame her. So, I mean, but, Amy Jo Johnson was kind of moving on to, she was moving on to pursue other projects. So, I mean, I respect her decision, she did what she had to do, and, I respect her decision, like I said. So, it kind of leads to a new Ranger coming in. So, eventually Kimberly agrees to go to Florida, train for the Pan Global Games, and I already discussed Kimberly passing her power coin to Katherine in the process. So yeah, like I said, this is a different shade of pink in a nutshell, and just a very fun episode, and a good way to kind of wrap up the story arc. So eventually we get a few episodes here and there. Most of them pretty much focused on Katherine, really. But nothing too important, really. You gotta see like a few episodes where Tommy was going in a craving spree, where he was like eating so much junk food. It was like he was like going through bulimia, but it was not directly stated as such. But one of Rita and Zed's monster actually got inside Tommy's stomach, which caused him to have him, binge eating, constant eating all the time. And that was really what it was. So then we get to Master Bile and the Metallic Armor, which was a 3-part miniseries. And what happens is that Rita's father, Master Bile, debuts, and Master Bile, kidnaps Ninjor, and also in the process, Master Bile and a lot of the villains of the series took over the youth center, and they had like this whole end of the world party. And the Power Rangers were also introduced with the metallic armor. Now, it's not the metallic armor that you think that it would be, but it turns out to be just nothing more but sparkly glitters on their suits. Apparently, they couldn't really get the ability to use the costumes from the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger movie. But I always thought they could have done something like that, using those suits. I mean, somewhat like it, maybe not exactly, but just something more that stands out. But instead, all we got was just glittery spandex suits. So that was just really ridiculous to me. And eventually, there was so that was basically Master Bile and Metallic Armor, and eventually I think they rescued Ninjor, and the Power Rangers had to go through really all this tough trials, and this also kind of introduces us to Zeo crystals, which would foreshadow another story arc that would happen a few episodes down the line. And the Zeo crystal is first mentioned in the series, and how they're claimed to be the most powerful source in the whole universe. And and then after that, basically Power Rangers end with the horseback riding, and that was basically it. So That's basically Master Bile in the metallic armor. Um, and you have another somewhat Catherine focused episode here, and then you get to Rangers in Reverse, where what happens is that Master Vile's still sticking around, and he unleashes the Orb of Doom, which causes the Earth's rotation to reverse back in time, and the Power Rangers have to attempt to at least destroy or remove the Orb of Time. And also in this episode, this was Catherine's birthday, so they wanted to throw out a big party in a carnival. Um, but eventually that backfires. The Power Rangers fail to destroy the Orb of Doom, and it was one of the few Mighty Morphin Power Ranger episodes where you don't see a Megazord fight. So that's kind of one of the things that kind of makes it unique. Um, it was pretty rare at the time just to have no Megazord fight at all, because that's basically what almost every episode of Power Rangers is, like a giant robot battle. But you didn't see it in that episode, and so the episode ends with with the Power Rangers reverting into children, as well as the entire civilians of Angel Grove, and they're kind of reverted to their to their kiddish size. Um, so eventually, the Power Rangers couldn't morph, and even though Tommy tried to make an attempt, but that backfired. And Rita, Zed, and I think Goldar also grew into size, and they basically took up, pretty much destroyed some of Angel Grove, and that's Rangers in Reverse ended in a cliffhanger. I mean, it was kind of a shocker. It's one of my favorite season 3 episodes. Really great cliffhanger, especially for what appeared to be a one-off episode, or so we thought. And so that's basically Rangers in Reverse. And then we get to the Alien Rangers story arc also, which consists of only 10 episodes. And in that episode, the Power Rangers, they couldn't teleport with their communication watches, and so they had to do the hard way and travel by foot and find the command center. It was actually pretty bad. I mean, why would these kids be walking in the desert alone? I mean, wouldn't Zordon and Alpha try to teleport them? But eventually we would reveal that when the command center was shown to be inactive. But it was still very stupid. I mean, the Alien Ranger story arc just was one of my least favorite Power Ranger story arcs in history. The kid actors were just really terrible. Now, granted, people will say Power Rangers acting was never really all that spectacular, but even the adult actors weren't even that bad. But the Kid Rangers, on the other hand, I just really couldn't stand. Like I said, the Kid Rangers, I just couldn't stand their acting ability, and you had just a lot of goofy stuff that was going on. I think Tommy and Kimberly were posing as a detective, or they were posing as some random grown-up civilian, and there was this cop that almost resembled Carl Winslow. He was in the receptionist, and there's just a lot of goofy shit going on. I mean, it was just really bad. So eventually, Zordon and Alpha are active again, and they inform the Power Rangers about the Alien Rangers who reside in Aquitar, and they were basically the only ones that had power. So, the Earth was already rotated, and of course, it didn't really affect other planets. So the Alien Rangers, help the Kid Rangers, and basically substitute them since the Kid Rangers can't morph. And then, a few episodes, going in a few episodes, Billy builds this sort of object. Well, he built some sort of laser beam which allows him to revert back to his normal self. But eventually it works, however, but just before Billy could do that with the other Rangers, Goldar and the other villains show up, and Eventually they confiscate their ninja coins, and in the process they get turned into sand, and basically the ninja coins were basically destroyed. And now the Kid Rangers can't morph, like even when they try to grow again. So yeah, like the Kid Rangers, they couldn't morph, and it was kind of unfortunate since the ninja coins, their ninja powers weren't used for very long, because season 3 was basically 40 something episodes, which is actually pretty short compared to the first 2 seasons, which had like 60 or 52. But you had like all these constant multi-parters that were kind of in the way. So I mean, it did feel somewhat of a short season. And then you had a couple episodes here and there. So along the process, pretty much every Power Ranger except Billy, they had to go on the Zeo quest, and Zoran brings up the Zeo crystal that the Power Rangers had them scattered away just before the Power Rangers got reverted to children. And so, the Power Rangers have to retrieve the Zeo crystals, and they had to go on certain quests in order to retrieve them. And so they have to find a new power, and eventually in the 2-part mini-series entitled Hog Day Afternoon, Aisha goes to Africa. She retrieves the yellow Zeo crystal, but then she also meets up with Tanya. But eventually, Aisha wanted to stay in Africa to help, to kind of help out the animals, and so as a result, Aisha hands her yellow Zeo crystal over to Tanya, and so that was another notable moment in that episode. Excuse me. And then you also have another moment where the Alien Rangers fighting Hydro Hog, and Hydro Hog eventually devours water, and so they pretty much devour all the Alien Rangers' water supply, which are like the main source of the Alien Rangers since they're from Aquitar. Just basically in all without water that they would eventually dehydrate and eventually die. So the Alien Rangers are very thirsty, and the Power Rangers had to receive them a supply of water in order to help them regain their powers. And so eventually the Alien Rangers destroy the Hydro Hog, and also when they get back in the command center, all the Power Rangers retrieve all the 5 Zeo crystals. And while they all form, this allows the Earth to rotate forward. So as a result, the Power Rangers revert back to their teenage selves, and basically the Alien Rangers say their farewells. And also before the Power Rangers could celebrate, what happened was Rito and Goldar, they planted this detonator, and thus the command center eventually gets destroyed. Zora and Alpha were supposedly dead, but before that they all disappear, and so the alien, Billy teleports them out of the command center, and as well as Billy himself, and the command center explodes in front of them, and and that's really the episode ends with Power Rangers staring at the command center, which is basically blown up by this point, and and the episode ends in a cliffhanger, leaving uncertainty as to what the fate of the Power Rangers is going to be. So that's really Power Rangers Season 3. Just a very intense season. Just the villains were starting to get the upper hand over the Power Rangers. And eventually, we all thought the villains went over the Power Rangers, especially, in the Season 3 finale. Season 3, when I did that review, came off very overcritical, but, looking back, I don't think it was as bad as I made it out to be. It had its moments, There are some things that I like from that season. Just Kimberly's departure episode. Different shade of pink. Um, the Ninja Quest was fine. Stop the Hate Master was pretty cool. Um, so I mean, the multi-parters aren't as bad in season 3, unlike as season 2, which was just a lot of filler multi-parters. But season 3 had story arcs that were kind of driven from one episode to another. Um, so I mean, that was season 3. I kind of underrate. I came off very cynical about it, but all in all, just a very enjoyable season. I do think there are some things that could have been different, but like Kimberly not being the third wheel in the whole departure story arc. But despite that, Kimberly had a pretty good send up, very cool send off. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on Power Rangers season 3. Thank you guys for watching. It was a pain in the ass to kind of do these videos because I constantly had to redo them so many times. But despite all the interruptions that are going on, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And so yeah, like this is basically my Morphin Power Rangers reviews. So yeah, that's basically for this video. Till next time, this is Gold Standard 0924 signing out.